You're watching Cricket World TV. It's time for a county hotspot as the latest round of LV County Championship games either come to an end today, fingers crossed, or have just finished. I'm John Pennington. I'm joined once again by Matt Carter. Hello, Matt.
Hiya, how you doing?
Very, very well. And the reason we're doing this on a Thursday is because you're off to Edinburgh to do some running this weekend.
Yeah, we've got the Edinburgh Marathon on Sunday. I'll be making my debut in the marathon, so a little bit anxious about that at the moment.
Well, we wish you all the very best, and that's obviously from everybody here at Cricket World. Go well, and hope you come back in one piece.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I'll let you know how it all gets on when I get back. Fingers crossed, anyway.
Certainly will. Now, for most of the country this week, we've had absolutely fantastic weather, which means we've got a lot of cricket to talk about, which is absolutely brilliant. And we've got another new leader at the top of the LV County Championship Division 1.
We have, yeah. It's Middlesex's turn this time to climb to the summit. Middlesex, they picked up their 4th win in 6 games, actually, Middlesex, which is the best record around. I think they're the only side to have won more than twice. I think I actually read a stat earlier that 6 times out of 9 the side have won the title if they won 4 of their first 6. So it's looking good for them. I mean, they were benefited this week with a lot of the other sides not in action. I think they were the only one of the top 5 actually playing. But you've got to win your games, and they did that. They faced up against the Northamptonshire side, were really struggling. Again, on paper it looked like a straightforward win, but let's say you've got to win them, and they look good once more. I think they showed their depth. That middle order that was causing them a lot of problems earlier on in the season is now starting to fire a bit. And David Malan's looking good. He's averaging over 40, and now Dexter, I think, has got his seasonal average up to 50 with a couple of knots out helping that somewhat, but it's still impressive. And even Joe Denley found some form because he'd been really, really struggling. And then even without Steve Finn, Toby Rowland-Jones came in and had pretty much the game of his life. He got his career best bowling figures in the first innings, beat them in the second innings, got his career best match figures and his career best score with a bat. So he has pretty much a superhuman effort really from Rowland-Jones. So obviously they didn't miss Finn that much, but you look at them 4 out of 6. This was the first time they've won back-to-back games, and I just wonder whether Middlesex are the most likely to stay at the summit. But you wouldn't like to predict that, given what has gone on before. And for Northamptonshire, again, it's another case of them just struggling to sorry about that. Just struggling to compete at the moment. I mean, they've lost 3 games by an innings. In all of those, haven't managed to bowl the side out. And when the opposition has wanted to force the declaration, they've been able to force the pace with a remarkable amount of ease. And with the bat, they've only passed 250 twice. And it's hard to see where they are going to turn this around now with confidence pretty much an all-time low, and it's very difficult for Northamptonshire to come back from here.
Yeah, it is sort of looking desperate. It's almost hard to find a way back. At least I suppose they've showed some form in 2020, so it's not all doom and gloom. The other game in Division 1 this week is actually, as we speak, still ongoing, if you like, in inverted commas, between Durham and Somerset down at Taunton. Matt, just to give us an update on sort of what's happened there and what's not happening at the moment due to the weather.
Yeah, this was a contest between 6th v 7th, which is a bit bizarre, really. You consider both these teams' seasons. Somerset are considered to be having a decent season, and Durham a poor one. But unfortunately, Somerset look like they might be denied by the weather. I mean, they needed 80 more runs to get. I think they're about 160 for 1 at the minute, chasing 240 odd. But from the pictures I've seen on Twitter, it does look like the world is ending at Taunton. I mean, the ground is completely underwater, and whether they can get any further play is unlikely, which is very frustrating for them because they would have actually gone up to 2nd, Somerset, which really quietly they are just moving through the gears, going about their business without pressure this year as well, Somerset, which I think is big for them. They've struggled to handle the pressure, but they're having an excellent season, and this will be really frustrating because the fixture at Chesley Street, actually, they were chasing 290 against Durham and got to about 200 odd for 3, and they might have won that one had rain not prevented. So definitely frustrating times for them, but certainly positives. And Marcus Trescothick has made another 100 after a couple of golden ducks, so he's in excellent form. And for Durham, this was the first time their batting has properly failed because it's been bailing out their bowlers so far. But looks like they're going to preserve their unbeaten record, which is strange that they are 7th and one of only 2 unbeaten sides.
We spoke last week about how this is a fascinating season because teams are sort of winning a few, then losing a few, batting's good, bowling's good, so it's almost sort of continuing there as well. And into sort of Division 2 then, and we got 3 3 positive results, which is obviously good because the weather held up. And another good win for Hampshire over Leicestershire. They really are looking very, very good. I mean, we've spoken a lot already about how their batting's firing, their bowling looks very good, very sort of solid balance. And the batting, they've got players, so Adam Wheater coming number 8, number 9, really looking good. And again, they look to me to be too strong for Leicestershire this week.
Yeah, they just look so formidable, Hampshire. I mean, with every other side in Division 2, you can find holes in them, but with Hampshire it's very difficult, with possibly the exception of missing a spinner, but aside from Worcestershire and Essex, nobody can really boast a genuine spinner of quality. It was an interesting game, this one. Leicestershire gave a decent account of themselves for 3 days. Hampshire were always slightly in the ascendancy, but whenever they tried to really pull away, Leicestershire did manage to reel them back in, which is a credit to them. And then suddenly on the final day, Hampshire dealt the killer blow, really. As you mentioned, Hampshire's batting depth. I mean, Matt Coles came in from number, I think he was batting at 8 or 9, and he hit at 80 at a pretty rapid rate and simply took the game away from Leicester. I think when he came to the crease, Hampshire were 240 odd in front with only 4 wickets left, and maybe Leicestershire might have fancied chasing something under 300, but Coles took that lead to about 370, and from there Leicestershire just pretty much buckled under the pressure. They were dismissed for 96 in just 30 overs, which is the first time Leicestershire have really started to show signs of the failings of last year. Up to now, they've been very solid, and there's been plenty of reason for encouragement. They shouldn't be too disheartened by that collapse, because Hampshire, as we said, they probably are the best team in the division, and from what's gone before, they've been good. I think the only problem has been perhaps a little bit of a lack of X factor, but having not won a game in so long, it's bound to be difficult for them to get over the line. But that was probably more appropriate in the previous 3 games where they've been in positions to force a victory and not claim one. But on the plus side, Nathan Buck's coming back into the side, and I think he is a former England Lions player, and he started to look a little bit like the bowler that people thought he might. Positive them. But as we said, for Hampshire, 3 wins now they've got out of 5. They've not really been troubled in any of those games, and there's just so much depth in that team that it's very, very hard to see anyone really getting the better of them.
Yes, as you say there, Hampshire doing enough to win on that sort of final day, and that, of course, is what good teams do. I suppose the only team that might be able to take it to them in a straight fight this year will be Worcestershire, given the fact they've got Syed Ajmal, who was on outstanding form once again as they beat Essex quite well this week. Yeah,
it's just a sensational coup really by Worcestershire to get Ajmal. I mean, in England there is a complete lack of genuine top quality spinners in the top division, let alone the second division. And Ajmal was always going to wreak havoc in this division. And this week, I mean, he just tore Essex apart. I mean, the pitch was playing slow and low. I think that's been put down to the floods that Worcestershire experienced over the winter, which has made the pitch behave a little bit like that. But I mean, second innings figures of 7 for 19 are just phenomenal, really. And Essex had no answer. He's got 25 wickets now in just 3 games. He tops the leading wicket taker charts in Division 2. A lot of those other players have played 4 or 5 games, and he just gives them an unparalleled X factor, really. Ajmal. He is a sensational performer, and it's a little bit similar to when Sussex had Mushtaq Ahmed at their disposal. That it just gives you that advantage that other teams just can't compete with. And especially in Essex batting lineup, who were lacking a couple of players. Obviously, Robbie Vipara is playing for England, and Ryan Tendulkar as well, and Alistair Cook's services now. It's hard to say they're hard to quote that as a reason for their failings, because they're not going to have Cook to turn to again this season. But Essex were just too good, and you have to give a word to Darryl Mitchell though as well. He scored 97, and no other player passed 50. So as brilliant as Ajmal has been, the runs of Mitchell are also pretty imperative in Worcestershire's climb to the top of the table. And their form at New Road is frighteningly good, actually. They've lost 1 in 10, and they've won 3 out of 3 at New Road, and they haven't looked like losing so far. As for Essex, they'll be a little bit frustrated with their batsmen. It was an opportunity for them to claw back ground after a difficult start. The rains hit them and injuries, but it was perhaps an opportunity that was too difficult for a bowling attack that was really lacking in the majority of the starting 11. And it was just frustrating for Essex, really, that this fixture arrived now. But certainly, despite that, they have to be a little bit annoyed to be bowled out for 203 in that first innings, because that probably was the deciding factor, because they were never going to make up a 90-run deficit against Ajmal.
No, not against Ajmal, and probably not on the pitch as you described. I mean, Ajmal obviously a genuine world-class spinner who spins the ball both ways. And I was reading a piece on Moeen Ali who says he's been taking a few tips from side Ajmal and might at some point be ready to unveil a doosra, which we get very excited about in England because no English player has ever really mastered it or certainly not showcased it on the international level. So it could be one to watch there.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, he's been improving year on year out with his spin bowling, and like you say, having someone with the experience and knowledge of Saeed Ajmal in his camp has got to only help him, and especially for the other Worcestershire young spinners. I think they've got a few there. They've got Sheikh Chowdhury and Jack Leach. So yeah, it's definitely benefited to have him around the place.
Certainly is, and the final game in Division 2 this week, an important win I think for Gloucestershire against Kent, because they'd had a bit of an up and down start to the season. Some key players weren't in form, but this week everything coming together really. Runs for people like Hamish Marshall for a change, and the returning players performing well as well. Really, the bedrock of this win, would you say?
Yeah, but it was a big win for Gloucestershire, this one. I mean, they were winless in 5, and their promotion hopes are pretty much flying away, to be honest. But I mean, it's still pretty compact in Division 2. I know Worcestershire and Hampshire do have 3 wins, but if they were to lose this week and one of these other sides who are on a single win were to pick up a win, suddenly it gets a little bit closer. And Gloucestershire have at least given themselves a platform to build. As you say, their batting had been relying on Gidman and Tavare, and finally Marshall's come to the party. The only real downside is Michael Klinger's struggling for form, but I think he only averages 18. And the one frustration from this result as well was Gareth Roderick came back. He's a highly promising player, the 21-year-old keeper. He top scored in the first innings with 59 when conditions were tough. I mean, this was the same day where Kent were reduced to 33 for 6 at the close, so that was an impressive 50 for him. But he broke his finger and again will be out for a prolonged period. And obviously you mentioned returning. The other one was Will Gidman, who triggered that Kent collapse to 33 for 6 and dispatched Kent's top order again in the second innings. He is just an exceptional bowler at this level. I think only 2 bowlers have taken more wickets in Division 2 since 2011 than him, and they missed him last week at Surrey. You just wonder, had they have had him defending 270 against Surrey, it might have turned out a little bit different. But with him there now, they might fancy just starting to string a few results together, because your season can change quickly with that. Kent themselves were looking to string a few results together this week after a couple of promising weeks, but it was a little bit like 2 steps forward, another 2 back for Kent. They started off poorly, they got back on track, and then they've thrown another shocker of a performance, really. Looked at them last year, they won 2 and lost 2 and drew the rest of them, and then they were a very difficult side to move, but the batting has collapsed with alarming regularity this year, and it's almost as if they've undergone a little bit of a personality transplant this season.
And what they've got next, of course, and we'll move on to our sort of preview side of the hot spot now, is they host Worcestershire. So that is a tricky test for them. Just to give us your thoughts on that game this week as we look ahead to the games in Division 2. We'll start with Division 2 for a change.
Yeah, brilliant. They're going to be the latest side in the Saeed Ajmal line of fire, unfortunately, with a top order that's struggling. It doesn't bow particularly well, but if Kent do get a win, then suddenly the gap between Kent and Worcestershire will close quite significantly. I mean, you've got Worcestershire on 3 wins, Kent would move on to 2, so all is not lost. They are at home, so Ajmal won't be enjoying conditions as conducive as what he was afforded at Worcester this week. I think you do have to make Worcestershire favourites. I mean, they're on a brilliant run. I think they're unbeaten in 7. The last time they did that, they were promoted in 2008, so they're flying high, and Kent's confidence will have been knocked a little bit by this latest result. But Dougie Bollinger will be against his former side, and he'll perhaps look to make a bit of an impact. And what Kent must try and do is get out that Worcestershire batting lineup. And as brilliant as Mitchell's form is, there are question marks about the rest of it. Last year was heavily reliant on Moeen Ali, and this year it might be heavily reliant on Mitchell. So that is where Kent have to target. But it's going to be difficult just with the Ajmal factor to consider, and I'm not sure whether Gareth Andrew will be back for Worcestershire, because he's a significant miss. He missed this last game. Obviously the pitch at Worcester wouldn't have been that conducive to him anyway, but at Kent they could probably do with him considering the form that he's in.
Certainly good, so we'll keep an eye on that one. Closer to home for you, Matt, Derbyshire taking on Gloucestershire. Gloucestershire, we just talked about, have got themselves, maybe got their season going with that win this week. Evenly match these two sides, or would you make Gloucestershire narrow favourites?
Yeah, I think I'd probably just favour Gloucestershire, although it's always difficult to read into one result whether that's going to change a season. But Derbyshire are the only side in the country yet to win in any format, so that is really worrying for them. I mean, they've got this new regime in place, and it just hasn't quite got going at all yet. There is talk that Marcus North may play in place of Chandler Paul. I can't remember whether Chandler Paul's going to the West Indies now or what, but there was talk that North may come in. I know North did score a 90 in the 2020, so he's looking in good form, North. But I just worry about Derbyshire's batsmen facing up against Will Gidman, especially if we see a typical sort of Derby pitch. I mean, surprisingly, the last few games at Derby, the pitch has really flattened out after the first day or two. At Kent, I think that they couldn't believe how flat it was on that fourth day, and it was a similar story when they played Hampshire. They just need something to get them flowing, really, Derbyshire. They're just struggling for that little spark. They need perhaps a bowler to really have the game of the season or something like that. But yeah, Gloucestershire favourites. I think that result was impressive, and they weren't that poor at Surrey when they lost. Obviously, missing Gidman was a big loss for them, and yeah, I think on paper they're starting to come into form. As we mentioned earlier, the only real problem with their batsman now is the form of Michael Klinger, who, as we know, was probably the standout batsman in the division last year.
Yeah, I was just thinking if Derby do want to have Marcus North in there, because Chandler, you would expect him to be involved in that West Indies New Zealand Test series. Let's hope they get the paperwork sorted, because they've sort of re-registered North as a overseas player for all formats and not just 2020 cricket, which could be quite interesting. Essex take on Surrey. I suppose this is a game really between two sides that are missing a number of players. No Cook and Bopara for Essex, of course, and no Chris Jordan, I thought, for Surrey either. And is Vikram Solanki still unavailable as well? But Surrey won last time out, so dare we make them favourites?
It's an interesting one. I mean, if Essex needed something last week, then they definitely need it this week. But with that, their bowling attack is the main problem. I mean, they were always going to be hit by international call-ups to Bopara and Cook and obviously Tendulkar. But I think that they concluded that game against Worcestershire with only two fit bowlers. Graham Napier were missed, and Oliver Newby, they've got on loan, he was also injured. Reece Topley has come back and played in the T20 last weekend, but it's whether they want to risk him, because he'll have to do an enormous amount of the workload considering their injuries, whether they are going to risk him in this game. I mean, they might have to. I'm not sure on the situation with David Masters, whether he'll be back or not, and then obviously Tymon Mills is as well on the treatment table. And you compare that to Surrey's bowlers, they seem to have an endless supply of luxuries here. They've got, I know last game they were able to rest Jay Dernbach and Stuart Meeker for the 2020s, which is just an odd decision in itself. It will be interesting to see what they actually do this time, because Tremlett and Matt Dunn both performed excellently last time out, and Surrey's bowling is probably the positive of the season. The batting still needs a lot of work. Graham Smith did at least find form last time, and it's a decent opportunity this for Surrey after winning the last one. An Essex side who were depleted. They've been in the doldrums a little bit, but for either of them, if they can get a win here, just gives you a little bit of something to work with. It perhaps gets you back into the promotion picture, but they both do need this win if they're going to force their way up the table. You're feeling too many more defeats now at this early stage is going to be terminal.
And the final game to look ahead to, Glamorgan against Leicestershire. Do you think this is an opportunity for Leicestershire to get themselves back on track, because they have been doing close in previous games and not quite able to finish things off?
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in this one, how Leicestershire are going to go after the defeat at Hampshire, which shouldn't really be taken too heavily against them, but it's how they respond from that final day drubbing they got. Really, it's probably going to tell us a lot about whether they are a changed outfit or whether their early season form was just merely form. But I think certainly on paper it's an excellent chance for them. I mean, Glamorgan themselves lost their first game of the season last time out against Hampshire, so they were both outclassed by Hampshire. Glamorgan are struggling for runs as well. I mean, William Bragg is carrying their batting lineup at the minute, and which is strange because you look at Jim Allenby, Murray Goodwin and Jack Rudolph, they're all three very good players, but they're averaging under 22, which is a big surprise. And it's actually Glamorgan's bowlers that and they stand out at the minute. Dean Kosker and Graham Waggon and Michael Hogan, they're all performing very well. But it's certainly one to keep an eye on. I mean, you don't want to suggest too early that Leicestershire are going to break that long-standing run, but it is as good a chance as any for them. I mean, they played Glamorgan earlier on this season. They got within a couple of wickets of finishing them off. I think they've been in that position on a couple of occasions actually. It happened against Kent, so they just need that extra something to force them over the line. Perhaps someone to implode or something like that, or a bit of magic. But they've certainly got a chance of breaking that duck, and I think Leicestershire are looking good. There seems to be a real togetherness within the squad that there wasn't there last year, and their young players seem to have benefited from a year's experience, and obviously they've got a couple of experienced heads to help them out as well. So fingers crossed, Leicestershire. You never know, they might just break that duck here.
An outside bet, maybe. Moving on to Division 1 then, we'll start with Nottinghamshire against Durham. So we're not really expecting Durham to sort of get out of the Somerset game with a win. They're probably going to escape with a draw there. What are your thoughts looking ahead to this one?
Well, I think you've got to fancy Notts in this one. The way Durham are playing, they're still winless. I know they haven't lost, but they haven't really looked on any of those games like they're going to win them. They're missing onions. I know Matt Wood bowled well actually at Somerset, and that was a positive because they have missed support from Wood and Harris, and they're both hotly tipped young bowlers who have struggled in these early weeks, which is perhaps unsurprising given the heavy expectation that was put on their shoulders. But Nottinghamshire, it's a case of where are they going to be at this year? You think with the players they've got that they are going to challenge for the title. Surprisingly, they haven't been that hit by England's one-day squad call-ups, with only Harry Gurney absent. You look at the likes of Taylor, Blum, people like that. They've got an excellent batting unit, and if Durham's bowlers aren't going to regain their form, it's going to be tough at Nottinghamshire. I mean, they expect the pitch to have a little bit in for both players and be a good pitch. I think it'll be a competitive game. I think you have to favour Notts. Peter Siddle was coming to form last time out. Ajmal Shazad looked good, and certainly, yeah, I think Notts are looking very strong with the team they've got, and you'd have to favour them here.
Just wondering, Matt, I'm not sure if it's this game or the next one where Ben Stokes is sort of targeting a return. I mean, whether it is or it's the next one, that's going to be a huge boost for Durham, isn't it, when he does come back? But I've got a feeling it's the next game, and it might be this one because they're ahead of schedule.
That's right, yeah. I think I read earlier that they are hoping he will be fit for this game, actually. It's just a question mark over how much he's going to be able to bowl. But for a team who are needing inspiration, I mean, Ben Stokes is probably the man you want, and Durham will be hoping that he can really ignite their season, get them going, because it's just been stop-start at the minute, and considering they're champions, they just haven't been able to really force anything. I mean, the character they've shown has been impressive over those 4 games, although they were probably going to lose this one against Somerset most likely, which I think is a concern that they have. Perhaps the batting has now finally started to buckle under the pressure of having to hold up the bowling, but if they can get Stokes back, it is a massive boost because he is a game-changing player.
Certainly is. Now, next up we've got Warwickshire against Somerset, and I don't know if any further update from Taunton. Are Somerset going to get that win, or are they going to go into this game on the back of a frustrating draw? And if so, what are just give us your look ahead to this one.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it's going to be a frustrating draw for Somerset, which is a shame because, as we said, they would have gone up to second, would have been the only unbeaten team in the division, and really no one's took any notice of them so far. It's all been about Middlesex, Warwickshire, Yorkshire, Notts, teams like that, but Somerset are just ticking over, and one of the things with Somerset is while other sides are going to be hampered by England, they aren't, and that is a big positive for them. And I think the difference this year is the bowling attack looks a lot stronger than it has done in recent years. Craig Overton got 5 against Durham. Alfonso Thomas is looking really evergreen at the minute. He was excellent, I'm led to believe, against Durham, and he doesn't seem to show any signs of age. And against Warwickshire's batting lineup, which is struggling, they might prosper. I think this is the Warwickshire now going to be without Ian Bell, and the rest of the batsmen are really not firing. Your likes of Baron Chopra, people like that. And I know Ricky Clark will be back. I think he's possibly second in their average list, which is evidence in itself of how poor the remaining batsmen come. And there are talk that a couple of young guys might come in. Freddie Coleman and Steve Hine might come in and perhaps really start to put pressure on some of these older heads who just aren't pulling their weight at the minute. And that is a big concern for Warwickshire. I mean, they'd like to think they're going to challenge for the title, but unless compared to the other sides amongst the top, they just lack those players who are going to score, say, 1,000 runs in a campaign, apart from Chopra, and he just isn't firing at the minute. It's going to be tough for Somerset going away to Warwickshire, but I think the way they're playing, they have to be considered favourites for this one. Somerset's batsmen are much stronger than Warwickshire's. Trescothick is firing, Peterson is looking good, Compton's struggling a little bit for form, but that is only going to be temporary with him, and there's certainly reasons to be very positive about Somerset this year.
Certainly are. I think Warwickshire's still missing Jim Troughton as well, though I understand is on the road to recovery, but I'm not sure he's going to be quite fit in time for this one either. Massive sort of holes in their middle order at the moment. Next up, we've got the Roses clash. Yorkshire against Lancashire, always hotly contested. Of course, this one up at Headingley. Just look ahead to this one for us.
Yes, I mean, the last two times these sides met was in 2011, and Lancashire won both of those games. I mean, you would not put money on a repeat of that this time. You can consider where they're both doing, how they both started the season, not the game. And Yorkshire have won 2 in 2 at home as well, so they're really making Headingley a bit of a fortress, and on both those occasions they've won convincingly. And you look at Lancashire's batting lineup, and it is struggling. I mean, I think they played Loughborough University this week, and they didn't really excel even there. I mean, Lewis Rees did get 100, which is a positive, because no Lancashire batsman, apart from the opening week, has scored a century when Ashwell Prince got one against Notts. So their batting is struggling, and whilst Yorkshire's batting lineup is hit by England cause, their bowling attack still looks formidable with Brooks and Plunkett, Patterson, Sidebottom, guys who really, really know how to bowl at Headingley, and it's not going to be an easy place for Lancashire to go and regain form. I mean, Yorkshire will be without Balance and Root, but they've still got Johnny Bairstow, Andrew Gale, Kane Williamson I think is still there at the moment. So they just look so much stronger than Lancashire. And it's going to be difficult for Lancashire to go there and force a result, but this is a Roses game, so you never know. Lancashire should be fired up for it. And if they need a game to turn their season around and get them inspired, then this is probably the one to do it in.
Certainly is, and the final game this week is Middlesex, the leaders, taking on Sussex, who were leaders earlier on in the season. That game starts on Monday. I realise I inadvertently transferred Chris Jordan back to Surrey earlier in this hotspot, Matt, so apologies for that one. So I'm going to leave the analysis on this one to you, because you know who's playing for which team, unlike me. It's not the first time I made that mistake either, so I need to get that sorted. Chris Jordan won't be playing, of course, he will be the England side, but he plus play for Sussex and not Surrey anymore. So well done, everyone who's picked that up, and I'll endeavour to get that right throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'm sure Surrey would love to have Chris Jordan back. But he's a massive miss for Sussex again, Chris Jordan. They haven't won in 3 games now, Sussex, after a sensational start, and they just need something to get them back on the track. I mean, they're still sitting pretty in the table, and they're still in an excellent position. But I think when they miss Jordan on flat pitches, they really miss him. They've got good bowlers, John Lewis and McGoffin and Nanyan, but they all need assistance to really excel. And Jordan is an exception to that. He's the sort of guy who can make things happen, sort of force games on flat pitches, and I think going to Lords it's going to be tough for them without that strike bowler, and the form that Middlesex are in, especially at Lords where they've won 3 in 3 and they're flying. They've got batsmen in form, and the bowlers, Steve Finn should probably be back. You look at him together with Roland Jones and Murtry, and that is a frightening attack. And even Middlesex's spinners, I mean, Ollie Rayner's not yet managed to have much of an impact, but you'd imagine once the wickets do start to dry up, get a little bit slower, he will come into it. And another guy as well, Ricky Patel, he played a couple of 2020s, and he's now putting pressure on Rayner. So there's so much depth with Middlesex, and I think you have to favour Middlesex, but they have been a bit Jekyll and Hyde this year. I know they won back-to-back games this week, so you never know. And Sussex are a decent batting side, so I'd say if you're going to choose a team to win, you go with Middlesex, but this one could be a draw. I think both teams have got excellent batting lineups. It's just how Middlesex's bowlers can go against Sussex's strong batting lineup. And I led to believe Matt Prime may be back for Sussex, looking to try and force his way into England's Test side just in time.
Yeah, that could be a huge boost for them. So we've looked ahead to all sort of 8 games this week. Which one would you pick out as the one that you'd like to maybe head off to and then sample some county cricket this week if you had the chance?
I suppose it has to be the Roses game, doesn't it? It's always sort of one of the main fixtures on the calendar everyone looks for, and I think it's just whether Lancashire can rise to that occasion. It's going to be intriguing, really. You've got to fancy Yorkshire in that one, but it is just the occasion of it. It has to be the one to go to. I think the season is starting to get interesting. Just on a little bit of a side point, with the 2020s now, teams having to balance both of those tournaments, and you just wonder what effect that is going to start to have on teams as well.
Very good point, and we'll briefly look into the 2020s at the moment. I think I'm with you. I would probably pick out the Roses clash to head off to, but seeing as you've already got that one in, I would probably go to Lords Middlesex against Sussex to see how Middlesex can cope with sort of the pressure, if you like, of being at the top of the table against a Sussex side with potentially Matt Pryor back in action. That could be a really important pointer ahead of England's summer. And just a quick word then on the NatWest T20 Blast. It's got rave reviews from last week. We spoke about it last week. A lot of fixtures again Friday. I think Friday, Saturday, so there might even be some fixtures on Monday. I'm not sure if that's right or not. Maybe Sunday as well. Any particular games that really sort of spark your interest this week? What are you maybe most looking forward to seeing?
There's a game between Northampton and Leicestershire that I think is interesting. Both these teams are perhaps dark horses for this tournament, and if one of those two can get on a roll, I mean, as Northamptonshire did last year, if they can do that again, then if they can get on a roll, then there's a decent chance of them upsetting the apple cart. I mean, 2020 is a tournament that does lend itself to upset, so seeing how they go will be interesting. I think there's Middlesex play Hampshire on Sunday. That's going to be interesting. Hampshire lost to Glamorgan actually on last Friday, which was a bit of a shock. A lot of people fancying Glamorgan, and Middlesex themselves have lost 2-2. By the time they play that fixture, they could have lost 3-3 because they visit Gloucestershire on Friday night. So it could be a game that we must win for Middlesex. If they were to lose 4-4, they would be near the exit. And Sussex and Hampshire as well on the Friday night is an intriguing one. Sussex are looking good actually, 2-2 for them. They've only won once last year, so they look a changed outfit. And on both those occasions, they've won games where they were in a position where they were right up against it and somehow found a way through. I think Yasser Arafat smashed 15 or 14 balls against Surrey in the last Friday night. So keep an eye on Sussex. They're playing really well. But I think the weather's going to be interesting this Friday night because it's not as perfect as it was last week. It's just how much the attendances are going to be hit by the weather. I mean, obviously the attendances aren't going to be as good as they were last week if the conditions aren't that good. Unfortunately, that is always going to be the most significant variable. But if the tournament can pull a useful crowd when conditions aren't great, then it's got to bode well for the future.
Yeah, let's hope so. Let's keep fingers crossed the weather is good, but even if it isn't, let's hope people turn out and are treated to some wonderful cricket. Sometimes you get some entertaining sort of 7, 8, 9 over side games, which is always one to look out for. So, well, that's it for this week's Cricket World County Cricket Hotspot. Matt, thank you very much for your time once again, and again, very best of luck with your marathon at the weekend up in Edinburgh.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll be reporting back next week. Battered, I'm sure.
We look forward to that very much. But enjoy your weekend of cricket, wherever you're going, however you're following. Thank you very much for watching here on Cricket World TV.